This episode brought to you by NewFit. NewFit, state-of-the-art technology using electrical currents to stimulate the nervous system, quicken healing times, quicken recovery of injured muscles, builds strength, optimizes the total functioning of your entire body, your musculature, your nervous system, your organ function, cognitive function, all of it. It's really a profound technology. Check out the link in the show notes. You can use code EbenFlow there. Head to new.fit/EbenFlow. That's NEU.fit, FIT/EbenFlow. Check that out. Really grateful to those guys for their support of this podcast. Also, our friends at Quicksilver Scientific, Dr. Chris Shade and company. Love those guys. They're absolutely family. Some of my favorite products on the planet. Nano Fuel. It's like ancient adaptogenic Adderall. Nothing quite like it to stimulate cognitive function, for focus, for getting you into the flow. It's all liposomal delivery, highly bioavailable, ginseng, astragalus, all the good stuff. Highly recommend it. Use code EbenFlow at checkout, quicksilverscientific.com. That link is also in the show notes. Other than that, enjoy this episode. Lots of love, y'all. Peace.
You have unlocked the eternal link to internal source, the key of imagination, your admission, access to the enlightened dimension. A gateway at the junction of darkness and light, the place at which the chaos of our conditioned frame of mind give way to a life in constant flux, only to be mastered through vigilant discipline. Peaceful times may come, testing times may go. This is the Ebb and Flow.
We're in.
We're in, bro.
Are we recording?
We're recording.
Beautiful.
It's all recording.
Love it. Love it. So is this me introducing this or you? The tables have turned.
Yeah, it's you,
I
brother.
always feel like
It's you. I mean, I think you should start.
Yeah.
Give a shout out to Mohammed in this.
Yeah.
Dope setting we're in.
Yeah, so we've got a new we're feeling out this new podcast space at this place called Badia over in it's in Los Angeles, and it's an amazing Moroccan furniture store. Our friend Mohammed has blessed us with using this space. He's got this kind of like tea den set, and I've bought some things here for the house, different pieces, furniture pieces. He's got amazing like handmade stuff from that he gets all from Morocco, and I came in and I was like, we need to do a podcast here. So here we are.
It's perfect, dude.
I mean, I'm
realizing how much stuff at Mom's house is from here.
Oh yeah. So this is the first Reality Now interview. Reality Now collaboration with the Ebb and Flow. This will be released on Reality Now and the Ebb and Flow, but
first Reality Now.
Yeah, so we'll navigate that later.
Yeah.
I was
dope, man.
Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting. You know, I was thinking the other day how isn't it interesting how we're just monetizing talking these days?
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody's just talking and making money talking.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. I've been listening back to our old pods. This weekend I listened to Into the Metaverse Part 1.
That's a classic. It's kind of a
It is a classic. And some of my conversations with Jarrett on his pod.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about that, how interesting it is that we're just doing these podcasts. We're talking into microphones.
Right.
Having conversations about life, which is essentially what it is, I think. I think that we're in this interesting place where people are interested in learning new strategies, new perspectives on how to navigate life. And I said this thing in this podcast I was listening to the other day. The only thing I'm really interested in now, because we could talk about sports.
Yeah, right.
We do our cultural breakdowns, which are always fun. It's fun to have those conversations coming through the lens of spirituality or psychology or, the things that we're interested in.
Right.
We could talk about sports. We could talk about nutrition or weightlifting or, anything like that. And yet we somehow choose, I feel over and over again, because I'm most interested in it, the conversation of self-mastery.
Right. Self-realization.
Self-realization, self-mastery.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. It's an interesting time. Maybe it's the end times.
Well, something I feel like I have to get over that I've realized, and I think it was my issue of taking the knowledge that we've been given for granted, is that a lot of people don't have this knowledge. And it's not about,
what's the knowledge?
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not about, I have the knowledge that you don't have, but it's like the way we grew up with our mother and the spirituality that we were taught. It's like, when I meet people, they don't off the bat know who Ram Dass is. They don't know who Terence McKenna is. They don't know who Bhagavan is. They don't know who Ramana Maharshi is. They don't know what enlightenment might mean. You know what I mean? So it's important to, people want this knowledge, and it's something that should be shared. So, I just think, because I can really take it for granted. I can really think, they know it. They've read all the things I've been blessed with, which really isn't true. It's really not the case. And that's not coming from a spiritual high ground place for me. I just think that, in the same way, I don't really know how to drive a tractor. Some dude knows how to drive a tractor.
Yeah.
Do I need to know how to drive a tractor? Maybe not. But do more people need to know how to meditate? Probably.
Yeah.
So people want this knowledge, which I feel like is why people talking has become so prevalent and now being this kind of new wave of business. Now, of course, you could get people talking about nonsense. Oh my God, and then you could think, well, nonsense is subjective because one man's trash is another man's treasure. But to your point, what are we talking about? I feel like we're talking about these things that are evergreen, that people will always need to know and learn to make their lives more contented.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
So your journey, I mean, when we were just pulling up in here, we were like, wow, okay, so we're doing this podcast in here. I mean, it's like
a Moroccan furniture warehouse.
I mean, in a year from now, we're going to look at this and just be like, we were doing that there because 2 or 3 years ago, we were just doing podcasts on your dining room table with the dogs,
barking,
going insane in the background.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I know, dude. It's hilarious.
So you started with Mike, but I mean, if I
said before that.
So with Nate.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had, I mean, did you ever imagine when you were in the NFL you would be here?
Well, it's funny you say that because remember I had
then
that show
you had
on
the
NPR.
Number 73. That's so weird. So this was always part, or maybe not always, but very early part of your fabric.
Yeah. I was always interested in that experience in Jacksonville. Met Dave.
Right.
Luckin. Shout out to Dave.
So for people that, let me just say, for people that don't know, when Eb was playing for the Jacksonville Jaguars, he met a guy who ran a station on NPR in Jacksonville, and the guy allowed Eb to have his own late night show which again, oddly, I was like your unofficial official co-host, and you would do music and literature. It was and it was called The Number 73.
Yeah, The Number 73. Dave Luckin was the music director of the local NPR station.
Right.
And I was putting on some fundraiser charity event, and we met, and he said, Eb, why don't you come by the studio, bring some music, we'll hang out, you talk about your event, we'll play music, and just come check it out and hang out. And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So I went and I did that. I brought him a big playlist of music. We jammed to that and talked about this event. And while I was in there, I just fucking fell in love with the atmosphere and this idea of going into a little studio, a little cave with a mic,
right,
and using my voice.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Yeah.
It really lit me up.
Yeah.
And after that, he said, Eb, I've got a few empty slots I need to fill. Would you want to have your own show?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck yeah, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do that. So created The Number 73. It was a late night, Wednesday night at midnight, or Wednesday nights at 11 p.m.
Right.
The Number 73 came on, and I'd put a playlist of music together, and then I'd do poetry readings or snippets from books or whatever it was that I wanted to do, and I would make a whole theme. Every episode had a theme.
Right.
It was dreams.
I still have those CDs in my car.
They're fucking great playlists.
White tuxedo night or something, like just funny
black tie.
Yeah. Desert, driving through the desert.
Yeah, the desert episode. Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And so it really started then, and then even more on that, I remember one moment in the locker room in Jacksonville. It was some time between meetings or before practice or whatever it might have been. And I'm sure I was on Adderall with like a giant dip in. And we were sitting around, a bunch of guys just sitting around, and we were just talking about shit.
Mm-hmm.
Life, movies, culture. We were just talking. And I remember thinking to myself, I literally thought to myself, I want to have a job where I talk to people for a living.
Interesting.
And that's recirculated in myriad forms of maybe I want to be a therapist or a psychologist or, a teacher, something in that realm where I'm interacting with people and having these discussions,
right,
conversations, towards something,
right.
And here we are, dude. We are. Came out of football, met Nate doing the cannabis advocacy.
Right.
He lived in Venice.
Yeah.
And I said to him one day, I was like, hey, dude, what do you think about doing a podcast? I hadn't even really started listening to pods yet. I don't think. Maybe Joe Rogan I'd stumbled on, or Aubrey Marcus a little bit here, and Tim Ferriss here and there. But it was just calling me, like getting on the mic, using my voice, doing this thing. And then at that time, we had a lot to talk about. There was this whole thing of coming out of football and losing your identity and the healing life after football. What does that look like? And just we started talking about that. We started the Mindful Warrior podcast, which became Caveman Poet Society.
Dude, wait. It's so funny. Wait, that's so weird.
You came and took pictures, remember?
Yes, but it's so weird that you just said that it's called Caveman Poet Society, which I do remember. But in this moment, right before you said that, before I was going to interject you, I was going to say, you're like a caveman. I was going to say that, and then you recalled that it was Caveman Poet Society. There's something interesting about that, because also you did your 23andMe, and you had a lot of Neanderthal. You have a caveman, and how you talked about there was something interesting to you about going into the cave. You have this very Neanderthal caveman, and you've been talking about that show Vikings. There's something interesting, and even like sitting at the table before practice with guys, which is basically just around the campfire.
Yeah.
There's something caveman about you and your essence that I feel like I probably have less of. I have like maybe my own things, but I was just about to say that, and now you said it's Caveman Poet Society. That's interesting.
It is interesting. I think you're right.
There's something I feel like you have a real romance or nostalgia for that, for telling stories, for being sort of in the earth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that all makes sense to me.
Yeah, I love that reflection. I definitely have a thing about going into the cave.
Right.
That feels very comforting.
Right. Yeah, you have
like
that.
me in the cave with my family and my dogs.
Yeah.
And the fire.
Yeah.
That's about all I need.
Right. You're very much like that. Talk to me about being a spiritual it's funny how Ram Dass would say Ram stands for rent a mouth.
That's funny.
Have you ever heard him say that?
I think
he would say that a lot.
What does he mean by that?
Well, he would say, I'm just here talking. You just rent me for this thing, and I just talk, and I just say everything you kind of already know, but you think you don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's you, but
to some extent.
How do you? I mean, as a podcaster or an orator, I mean, you are a rent-a-mouth in a way. But how do you feel about, I've noticed this in my very small way now, because I'm building what I'm building with Reality Now and stuff, but how do you feel about being out in the world? Because we've gone out a lot, and you'll be seen in public, and people will say, hey, man, it's good to see, I love your podcast, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How do you feel about being a spiritual, let's say a spiritual leader, and then going out into the world, and then the responsibility of that? Because that people, maybe this is me skewing it in I don't want to say paranoid way. That's a word I use a lot. But anyway, in a way of like, people are waiting for you to do something wrong, or you have to live up to something. How do you feel about that?
People are waiting for me to do something wrong?
No, I just think that. Well,
let me get caught with the margarita in my hand at the strip club.
Well, but see, doesn't that come down to I'm a human too? Like, what do you want from me? Like, but anyway, I just want to know, what is your thought on being a spiritual leader, saying certain things on social media that are broadcasted, and then you go out into the world and living up to that? Does that ever come across you? Does that come up for you?
It's a good question. It's interesting. I think it would if this was all an act or something I was trying to do.
Right.
Right. I think that whatever it is that I'm doing, the work of my life is to simply be the best version of myself that I can possibly be, which even more deeply means that I'm simply doing my best to come to terms with my humanity. My humanness. And I would say that my two superpowers are this ability to clear myself out of the way, clear my ego out of the way, so that Spirit, God, the divine source can move through me whenever I'm speaking. And that coupled with and not always so comfortable ultra willingness to be vulnerable and to just be honest about where I'm at. And so that removes anything from my psyche, any anxiety from my psyche about being caught on a down day or, you know, screaming fuck you to the guy who cuts me off in traffic.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I think that, you know, and even that thing, isn't that a funny thing? I just said it. I'm striving to be the best version of myself that I can be. And what does that mean? You know, in a motivational David Goggins, Tony Robbins plane, it's like, gotta conquer everything and make $1 million and have a house and drive Ferraris and, you know, have this massively successful existence.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, being the best version of myself is essentially learning how to navigate the challenges of life without causing more chaos around me.
I love that.
I've really gotten to this place, man. It's fucking strange and it's uncomfortable. And we were just talking about that show Vikings, about how these people, show Vikings, gotta watch it. If you're listening, you gotta watch this show. And it was almost like a fucking plant medicine ceremony for me to watch this show. There's 6 seasons. There's like 80 episodes. I highly recommend it. I fucking basically binged it for the last month. And it gave me so much context about where our ancestors come from. And a big part of us is this Viking lineage, and even Vikings, they were very Neanderthal-ish type people.
Right.
You know, similar, very similar DNA, like came out of the forest. And they didn't know what to do with themselves if they weren't in conquest or in a war or fighting.
Right.
They would create all kinds of chaos around them, betray each other, fucking try to overthrow the king, you know, start betting, start, you know, screwing everybody you see, drinking till you pass out, constantly drinking. You know, and I have that interesting, there's that motor inside of me that's been there for a long time. And it's also part of where we come from in our childhood and alcoholism and all these different things, and who our family, the members of our family are, and how they function, and relationship dynamics, and how we fit in the world, and how we find our self-worth and all of that stuff. But it's also this very deep genetic programming, this very deep wiring in the DNA of like how we exist. And that worked really well for me during my football days. And then it became completely exhausting and just wore me completely out in my years after football. And it's become the thing essentially that I'm moving with and confronting on the path to coming to terms with myself. You know, it's something that comes up over and over again, like learning how to just be. I went to do this event in Mexico, and I'm sitting there on the beach. I'm on the lounge chair on the beach, white sand, turquoise water, got a fucking coconut, drinking out of a coconut. Right. And there's something in me that's like, gotta go, you know? And I'm like in turmoil on the beach.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And I was feeling totally lost.
Yeah.
And I look at Kat and I'm like, I feel totally lost. She's like, Eb, you're not lost. You're right here.
Yeah.
You got no responsibilities right now. You got nothing to do. You could just be and enjoy. And you teach one class.
Yeah.
You know, initially I was supposed to teach every day, but because of the schedule and the amount of people, the number of people that came, they only had me teach one day, and I did a podcast one day, and so I had this time to just rest and chill and be on vacation, and I was just like,
yeah,
you know, And then I'm having all of that dawn on me. And this is after many podcasts this past year where I'm saying, oh, I had to take the year off doing podcasts and turn it down to 0. And still, this thing is lingering still.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is the difference now, where it was almost as if I had found myself in utter paradise, and God is like, okay, Eb, here you are. It's completely turned down to 0, dude. How does it feel?
Right.
And I got to confront that and be like, oh, I still think I got to do something to be worth something.
Yeah.
And so there's a really, incredible moment. Mom called one morning and she told me about this experience she had had and basically ended up saying, Eb, we made it. Burst into tears. I'm in tears. She's like, Eb, I love you. You can put your weapons down now. Just out of the blue.
Interesting.
And then that was followed up by this Temescal ceremony, which is a sweat lodge.
Right.
Going to this adobe igloo, which is basically going back into your mother's womb.
Right.
Which was like, unbelievable.
Yeah. Right.
We could talk about that if you want. But it was interesting. The big thing is like, going back to your question of feeling like any anxiety or anything about how I've got to be out in the world or how I need to show up. And my current task, man, is just learning how to be good with myself.
Right.
And I've gone so far through this thing, whatever it is, with the meditation and the yoga and just all the stuff of like getting quiet and learning how to breathe and focus on my breath. It's so interesting. The rewiring has gone so far through that the thoughts still come, but there's no anything in my body. However, it's still difficult to do nothing.
Right.
It's still difficult not to freak out.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like what is the action of doing nothing? What is the counteraction to creating the chaos?
Right.
Yeah. And so that's what I was saying.
Well, I've thought
of learning how to just be.
Right. Well, so first of all, just to kind of recap what you just said, no, it does. Of course it does. I think to recap what you just said about the concern about, see, it's really more of a reflection on me, because why would I ask that question?
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think it's probably because of my insecurity about, I don't know why I have this insecurity about speaking about, I think I have a lot of darkness in me. Actually, I do. I have a lot of darkness in me that I've been working to move out of my system. And I believe that when I talk about light, the darkness goes, hey, you're just bullshitting. And you may not have that. You have your own foibles or whatever. You have your own things, like we were talking about the other day with the phone, not wanting to answer the phone. Yeah. Everybody has their own sort of hang-ups or their sort of bag, as Robert Bly would say. Like, you have your bag of like defects trauma and shit, and you got to like keep clearing out that bag.
Yeah.
But so it's probably more of a reflection on me and just continuing to surrender to the light and the love, because I got a very strong voice of darkness in me that by the grace of God I've been able to move out of and away from. So it does make sense for you, because, and like I've said on other podcasts with you, it's not a charade for you, and I believe that's why so many people have reacted positively to your podcast, because you can sense when it's a charade.
Yeah.
You can sense when somebody's not speaking from their intuition, they're speaking more from their intellect. If you listen to the great sages, they're speaking from a place of honesty and truth, which I believe lives in your heart, where what you're saying is integrated. You know, I feel like there's a very big difference between knowing what the answer is supposed to be in your head, but actually being able to live the answer in your heart. You know, I've experienced that with 12-step programs. I know exactly what I'm supposed to say. Probably because I've got a master's degree from Mom growing up about what the slogans are, what you're supposed you know, but it's like, can I really live that? That's a big difference for me. And that's probably why that question, upon your, you know, reflecting on your answer, it doesn't really equate to your experience in the same way. But then what was the other thing you were talking about?
Learning how to just be.
Yeah, oh yeah, and then manifest destiny. You know, that's come up for me. I think as humans, you know, we seem to be the creature that participates in this manifest destiny thing. So like, what is your destiny? And I feel like that's always on our mind or on our heart, whatever you want to say, wherever that lives. So I think there's something always going on in humans where we're wondering, am I living up to my potential right now? So maybe it's not so bad actually feeling those feelings when you're on the beach and you have the coconut and you're in the most beautiful scenario possible, where you're still going, what can I do? But instead, when you grow and get that awareness around it, like we say, awareness, acceptance, action, you start looking at it from a different place. You start saying, oh, wow, it's coming up again.
Yeah.
What am I supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to spin you into, oh, my God, I got to stop thinking about this.
Yeah, or starting a fight with somebody you're close to, or going off the handle, or going and drinking, you know, 6 beers and a few margaritas.
Right. It can just move you into a softer place, if you will, of, wow, this is an interesting moment right now where I can really just, the volume is turned down, and I can really feel what my dharma is and get closer to what the truth of that is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's interesting.
It all is, isn't it? It's all this. And where are we going? We're going into deeper and deeper contact with ourselves. It's really the only place we're going. You know?
Yeah.
And yesterday and today. Today's Monday, May 15th. Yesterday was Sunday.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday to our mother.
Happy birthday to Mom.
It's our mother's birthday today. What was your...
I'm feeling super heavy and tender.
Oh, yeah.
And sensitive.
Yeah.
You know? And we were reading the current astrological happenings, and it was like Moon in Pisces and all these things happening, and it's a very sensitive, tender time right now, emotionally.
Right.
So if you're feeling that way, there's things happening in the stars and the universe that is pulling on us in these certain ways.
Yeah.
And that feels really true for me right now. And it's like, okay, I've got a lot going on. These weird things happening with family and tax stuff and business stuff and money stuff and relationship stuff, and it's all happening. And in the past, it could have been, I could have gone off and burned bridges or done this thing or gotten pissed off here or whatever. It looks good. There are a million things I could have done, and instead I just slow it down more. I just slow it down. Go on a hike this morning, go to Griffith Park, do some push-ups, take Luna for a walk, breathe, take a shower.
Well,
like coming here to get you.
Yeah.
I was all sweaty from the hike and shit. And I was like, in my head, there was like this interesting, I was in this interesting matrix of, I got to get there. I got to pick up Gus. We got to get set up. I got to do this. If we're going to be rolling by 12 and all this stuff. And I don't have time to take a shower. I literally put my underwear on, put my socks on, was halfway getting my pants on when I went, dude, just take a fucking shower. Just take a shower. Where's the fire? You know?
You're so easy for me to feel, dude.
Like, let's just take a minute.
I feel your energy so easily. Yeah. I feel your energy so easily. So, I feel like I want to know, because we didn't grow up religious, and that could be good, bad, whatever. You hear the sort of cliche of, I grew up to church and now I don't, anything that has to do with God, I'm not into, whatever, that whole story. But so maybe it was a benefit to us. I don't know. It probably doesn't matter, but like, what was your journey with trusting God and saying the word God? And,
it's really interesting.
Again, this could be, I'm asking the questions here, so the questions are coming from me, but there's an element of, and I don't believe this, I'm just very much like, let's excavate this and pull this apart, and see where our truth lies. Like moving away the delusion of like thinking you're delusional for saying God, and just trusting that, and trusting that it's what it is. It's part of, because it's really fascinating to me to like say God. And like, God, grant me the serenity, or God, I offer myself to thee, or praying and meditating and turning your life over to that. And then you stay so consistent with it that before you know it, a year in, 2 years in, it's totally it's integrated. So then you're just saying it and there's no qualms about it.
Yeah.
So that whole process of trusting it, or moving toward trusting it, is really interesting to me. And I don't know any other way now. Yeah. Like, I almost can't even pull back what my life would be if I didn't say the Serenity Prayer or the Lord's Prayer or what or pray or like what. I don't even know what that would be now.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting how it's also just such a fundamental part of humans? Like this whole God thing. Because when, back to you, this is why I think it's fun, like doing the podcast together, because we know each other so well. Mm-hmm. When you were in the NFL, you weren't sitting down and praying. No. I mean, you know what I mean? So like, maybe like, when did that start? And then also, when did you have like a process of trusting God and saying, oh wow, I'm saying God right now. I'm living in a new kind of God consciousness. Mm. And then trusting goodness and light. Trusting the God and the goodness and light that lives in there. Mm.
Well, I would say first that I always had this knowing that there was something greater than myself. There was some higher intelligence, spirit, God, moving through my life. From the time I was conscious, I remember being a little kid and thinking about that.
Really?
Just knowing.
Uh-huh.
Knowing that something bigger than me has me. Mm. Now, and I was always interested in magic and what then I would have called like drugs, but really plant medicine, psychedelics. I was always interested in that. these things that could shift your consciousness and you could have mystical experiences and all of that. Little did I know life itself could be a mystical experience, you know. Now, I always trusted and believed that things would work out, even in the darkest fucking times, dude, during our childhood when shit was like really crazy and chaotic and dark and heavy and difficult. Somewhere in me, I always knew it was going to be better. It would be better. It would get better. Like everything is going to work out. Everything is going to work out. And that being said, to not get too much into the weeds of my football career in particular, where I feel as though I really lost myself. I really lost myself. And when I really learned how to start communing with God and making my life about my communion with God, that was when I went to Al-Anon. Mm. Like that really gave me the structure and the fundamentals of cultivating my own spirituality and my own connection with God.
Right, right.
Learning how to pray and learning about meditation. Learning the yin and yang of meditation and prayer.
Yeah.
As your communion with God.
Right.
And working that spiritual program, you know. Right. Doing step 4 was one of the most powerful experiences of my whole life. Doing an inventory and writing out my life story and really getting to take a look at where I've come from, the decisions I've made, taking accountability, finding forgiveness. That really was the schooling for me. That was the education for me of learning how to make my life this communion with God, which is for me what I've always been craving. Mm-hmm. It was an interesting thing. I think I was listening to our podcast and I talked about Marth doing my numbers.
Yeah.
But in my numbers, she said, which was dead on also, about my whole life is about my relationship with God. Mm. It's really my whole life. Mm. Take everything else away. Mm-hmm. My life is about my relationship with God.
Is everybody's not?
I don't know. It's just, you know, when you talk about, it's a thing going back to even, you know, going back to your question about me being paranoid about being seen out in the world as the spiritual leader and being concerned about people waiting to see me fuck up or something.
Right.
And I put the work in. Mm-hmm. You know, I put the work in. I do my homework. Mm-hmm. I'm never the kid. I used to always be the kid who never did his fucking homework.
Right.
And I'd show up and I'm trying to finish my homework 4 minutes before the class starts, or I'm in complete turmoil because I'm trying to think of the excuse of what happened, why I didn't do it, you know?
Yeah.
And now I'm always prepared. I've because I do my fucking homework. Right. And for me, the homework is I meditate, I pray constantly. I'm constantly fucking just doing that.
Right.
Every interaction I have, good, bad, indifferent, it is grist for the mill, as Ram would say. Mm-hmm. It's fuel for the fire. It's material for learning about myself. Mm-hmm. And when you know yourself, you know everything. You know the world.
Right.
You know? That's why it's like Know thyself, dude. Forget about fucking figuring out that person or that shit over there. Know thyself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, and for me, that's my life's work, and that is what I would say is communing with God, because you're constantly tapping into this thing in here, this thing that's happening in here.
Right. And that's the process.
I think so. That's the process of life for me. I don't know if everybody's life is like that. I think a lot of people are focused on a career, or they're focused on doing this, or they're focused on, all of these things.
Yeah.
And for me, I would say my focus is my relationship with God, because that, for me, and my life experience, that is what informs everything else.
Right.
That is what allows me the opportunity to show up and be the person I'm supposed to be in my relationships.
Yeah.
Which is just an accountable man, father, partner, family member, who people know is going to do the right thing, is going to be there to support you when you're down, is going to be a positive influence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. And just that. It's interesting because I just feel like everybody has their own journey toward God and finding God and what their process looks like. And because I was going to say to you, or if I was going to venture to guess where it started for you, I would have said Al-Anon. And that's really where it started for me. Yeah.
Really formalizing it.
Yeah.
Started in Al-Anon.
Well, then I think why it starts there is because you really get into that very consistent, committed process where you're consistently praying. Mm-hmm. You're consistently doing inventory on yourself. Your consistency. Like I had a sponsor who said, because the first 3 steps are your coming into contact with your higher power and you're turning yourself over to it. So he said, I want you to look for evidence of God in your life. When you're out into the world, look for God. So it's an absolute God conscious program. Now, if we were, studying Judaism or Christianity or whatever it may be, they probably have their own process of coming into communion with God and trusting God. But that seems like that was ours.
Which is an interesting thing. That's an interesting concept about religion and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the only thing that matters is what works for you. What provides you with, and it isn't, it's definitely not it's not about giving yourself this scapegoat.
Right.
It's not about giving yourself some Santa Claus.
Yeah. No.
Figure in the sky.
It actually to me feels very much the opposite.
Yeah.
It feels very much like you're responsible and accountable. This is not take away my problems. This is like, okay, you have problems. What are we going to do about the problems?
We're going to face them.
Like it's actually completely the opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think is part of the misconception.
Right.
It's part of the misconception.
Totally. Well, that's that sort of bastardized version of it, I think, that we created, where you just ask God for whatever and then it happens. It's like, no. There's something. Faith without works is dead. You don't just pray and say, it's like there's an action to it.
Yeah. 1,000%.
So.
1,000%.
So, and then I'm curious about yoga. I think something's interesting, flexibility in yoga. This is something I've wanted to talk about, and I think we can take the opportunity here. People say, and you said this, I think it's so interesting because you're teaching yoga now, and it's something you do every day, as far as I know. When I was doing yoga, because I think I got into it before you, because you were in the NFL, you were doing that. You would always say to me, "I'm not flexible enough," and I used to say, "Eb, it's not about being flexible."
You'd say that too.
What's that?
You would say that to me too.
Oh yeah, dude. The amount of times we said that is
really.
We said that a lot.
Wow, I don't remember that one.
Dude, I used to like do a pose, and you would say, "I'm not flexible enough." And I think it's because your joints and your body was so just trashed. You probably could barely sit at a certain point. I just
didn't want to do it.
But that's interesting because to me, Hatha yoga, which is postural yoga, is actually not about flexibility at all.
Yeah,
like, and I just want to address this for people listening that, first of all, why do we always come up with these reasons? And I believe it's why I started doing the seasonal writing workshops with Writer's Block is Dead. Why do we always come up with these reasons to not do something? A. And then B, that's sort of that's like a side question. But then B, yoga is not about flexibility, particularly postural yoga. I mean, it's like you see these people, and this is just something that feels like factual to me. These people are more gymnasts. This is more contortionism. It's like you're doing people a disservice, doing this extravagant posture, and then somebody that can barely move starts thinking, oh, I couldn't possibly do yoga. Like, you really need to stop doing this insane bow pose where your leg is up on the ceiling and you're telling people it's yoga. Like, okay, you're doing a form of a yoga posture, but that's really unfortunate in terms of inviting everybody in, because that's not what yoga is about. It's more about flexibility of the mind and the heart. It's not about this body flexibility. It's actually quite the opposite. Anybody can join in on these postures. And if you look at the original yoga postures, it was corpse pose and lotus pose. So it was far from all of these gymnastic, contortionist, Cirque du Soleil style things. So I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, and then why we come up with these reasons to, not to prevent ourselves from doing things, Well, because you went from somebody saying, I'm not flexible enough, to now a full-blown yogi who's teaching.
Well, it's essentially, we say, it's not that we can't do that, it's that we won't do that. It's that I don't want to do that. So we build a prison around ourselves of, I can't do that. I won't do that. I'm not flexible enough. Meanwhile, it has nothing to do with flexibility. It's really about limiting beliefs and holding on to limiting beliefs and fighting for your limiting beliefs, which is an interesting thing in this same discussion, because a lot of people do that. For instance, I posted this clip from our last, or the first podcast that we did, about how everyone has someone that they can call.
Oh yeah.
You wouldn't believe how many
people actually respond that they don't.
Gus, you wouldn't believe how many people are fighting to prove that they have nobody.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Fascinating, dude. People are fighting me.
Wow.
To say
they don't have anybody.
They have no one.
Wow. There's 8 billion people in the world and counting.
One woman said it was privileged of me to say that, and that I clearly don't know, and that I need to stop smoking weed. She needed to like jab, right hook, shame me.
Well, shout out to her, because, girl, you can call me.
Gus, people
I'll tell you it's all going to be okay.
People will fight to protect their limiting beliefs.
Wow.
Their beliefs that they are alone in the world.
That's
They'll
amazing.
fight for that.
It's privileged to have Okay.
I'm not
First of all, what is this word privilege? First of all, okay, yeah, it is a privilege. I mean, what are you talking about? But is it? I mean, where are you even going with that?
No,
I don't even know
dude.
what you're saying.
No, these are people who are desperate to hold on to the victim life.
Right.
I'm alone. Nobody loves me.
Mm-hmm.
I have no one I can call when I'm in a hard place.
Yeah.
You are desperate to hold on to that.
And again, I'm going to reference Ram Dass here. There's two ways in life. There's two choices. And I don't particularly like getting into black and white thinking, but I believe this is true. There's two options in life. You can be a victim or you can be a creator.
1,000%.
You can be a victim or you can be a creator.
People really want to hold on to it, man. You want to fight for that. So, of course,
wow,
I'm
shocked. I'm shocked. I'm not. Actually, I am shocked. Actually.
I was shocked as well. And then I asked Kat her thoughts, and she said, oh, yeah, I knew people were going to have a hard time with that when you say something so definitive.
See,
like
back
that.
to the thing from taking it for granted. I heard you say that, and I was like, yeah,
Inspired.
obviously. You know what I mean?
I thought it was very encouraging and supportive. I mean, think about
inspired and like, yeah, of course we do. Thank God we do.
Think about the issues of mental health in this world, dude, and how many people are committing fucking suicide because they're walking around with this belief that they're completely alone,
right?
That they're fighting people.
Right.
The fact that you're fighting with me about you not having anybody to reach out to says everything you need to know about that individual.
Right.
It has they have literally closed themselves off to the world, saying, I'm isolated, I'm alone. No one can help me. Yeah. It's everybody's fault that I'm here. So
I literally just did my last reality now was titled "There's an I in illness and a we in wellness." It was
exactly
all about
right,
community.
Dude. That says everything about that entire landscape of belief right there. Right. There's an I in illness and a we in wellness. Yeah. If you're walking around thinking you're completely alone, chances are you're in a diseased state. You're in an illness state. Right. Anyway.
Well, but one of the big things we say that I've heard and that's helped me is that you're not terminally unique. Stop being so self-obsessed. Do you know how self-obsessed that is? Do you know how self-obsessed you are saying you have nobody to call?
It's wild.
It's about the most self-obsessed thing you could ever say. And you know what? Actually, I'm going to flip this on you. That is an incredibly privileged thing to say. Do you know how privileged you live? This is the first time in the history of humanity where you could say and still survive, I have nobody. You know how privileged that statement is? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You know how privileged that is?
Mm-hmm.
We would never be able to do that in the past. If you said that and walked away from the tribe, you're literally dead.
Yeah.
You're probably spiritually dead right now, but you would literally be dead back then. So actually, you're saying the really privileged thing, that you think you can go through this thing by yourself. So you might want to check yourself.
It was a very fascinating thing.
Because you're not unique. You're not terminally unique. You're special in your own lovely, special way, but everybody's going through some challenge, and it's either you get on your horse and you be a creator or you be a victim.
Yeah, and you go nowhere. It's fine. That's one way to roll. And if that's where you want to be, great, do that. So coming back to the yoga, Hatha yoga in particular is really about.
Wow.
It's really about balance. It's about endurance. It's about strength. It's about tapping into your nervous system via your physical body to reprogram your subconscious belief matrix. I have frequently said, whatever it takes, your whole yoga practice could be you in Shavasana, just breathing, tuning into your breath, not following all the mind chatter that wants to take you a million miles away, get you up off the floor, convinces you that you've got somewhere to be and something to do, and you just keep coming back to your breath over and over again. That's a yoga practice right there. And I agree with you 1,000%. I think it's a complete disservice, and it's really just not what yoga is to be the super gifted gymnast ballerina doing yoga. I mean, that's great and everything.
Right.
However, that's not at all what yoga is, and it doesn't have to be like that. Your postures can look like shit. I teach Bikram, you know that. Just for everybody listening, I teach Bikram. Or the 26 and 2 practice. It's 90 minutes. It's hot. It's humid. It's 26 postures. It's 2 breathing exercises. You do everything twice. These postures are very simple, and it's called a beginner's practice. It's very simple, and it's very difficult. And it's really not about how good do your postures look.
Right.
You do the best that you can in the postures one at a time. You make it as technically sound as you can to the best of your ability, given your physiology, your history of injuries, all of it. What you have right here, right now, today, in this moment, on your mat. What do you have? Give it that much. Do that much in those postures. It's not about how perfect the postures look. It's about how you get from one posture to the next and how you listen to yourself and the relationship you develop with yourself through that 90-minute process. Mm-hmm. Because you're going to want to do all sorts of things. You're going to want to leave the room. You're going to want to fucking
sit down when you're supposed to stand up.
You're going to want to breathe in and out of your mouth. It's really about how do you move through your transitions? How do you take care of yourself through that 90-minute practice so that by the end you're not being escorted away in an ambulance?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yep.
So it has nothing to do with how good the postures look, because a lot of people come in there, myself included. You start going 5, 6, 7 postures in, you're gassed.
Yeah.
And in your mind, you're like, this is a disaster. I'm in a fucking war.
Right.
As a teacher,
right.
I've had this opportunity to see people in their practice, and you could see them in their face. They're in that war.
Mm. Interesting.
And yet somehow they look totally graceful and at peace and are super strong.
Right.
And so meanwhile, you're in this inner war, this complete inner turmoil, inner conflict. And yet you just keep breathing. You just keep moving. Mm-hmm. You do the best you can. And somehow you move through this practice and you find yourself at the end changed in some way.
Right.
That's the yoga.
Right, right.
You know?
Well, one of the most profound things about the 26 and 2 to me is, see, we get into hard and easy because that's just sort of silly terms to me. But I was going to say it's never easy.
It's never.
But it's also never hard. Like, you don't even need to get into that paradigm. But anyway, you could be going for 10 years, and the practice is always there, full dragon breathing, fire going,
bringing you to your knees.
Right.
Yeah.
What it's funny what happens to me a lot when I get into that ego in there of what the postures are supposed to be. Dude, I get humbled so fast.
Oh yeah.
I love that in there because a lot of times you'll start the class like super like stoked up and strong. Sometimes you start like within the first 5 minutes you're trashed. But like sometimes you start and like halfway through the class you reach this point where you go, wow, I just give up. I'm just going to be here.
Yeah.
It's all I can do, and just do if I have a full posture, if I have a full blossoming of the posture, that's wonderful. If I don't, that's wonderful. But you just get humbled.
Completely humbled, dude. The times when I've gone in there on a mission to prove myself or fucking kill it, I'm on my knees.
Yeah.
Trashed.
Yeah.
Sooner.
Right.
When I just go in there and I let it be what it's going to be, I focus on my breath, I do the best that I can, I let it be a marathon and not a sprint. Those are always the best classes. I'm free of expectations. I'm free of any ideas about what it's got to look like. Those are always the most graceful classes.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily even the best.
Right.
Because that class where you got brought to your knees, completely humbled, 25 minutes in, that was a great class for you. Mm-hmm. You needed that, clearly. You know, I needed that. I've needed that.
Right.
Be like, okay, brother, slow down.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Or gone in there with a lot on my mind or something, some situation in the background that's pissed me off, and I'm like, in my righteousness or whatever, you're going to be brought to your knees. Because it's as much about your physical energy, it's as much about your emotional and mental energy as it is about your physical energy.
Yeah.
Especially if you're heated mentally or emotionally. You go in there, and your body's doing all this work, and you're holding on because you're in this mental and emotional turmoil. Mm-hmm. You're holding on more, you know, so your insides are like, so your breathing gets fucked up.
Yeah.
So you just get sat down.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I always remember you recommending or suggesting or encouraging meditation, and I'm like, nah, fuck that, I've got weed. But the yoga, it was definitely because I was just in so much pain.
Right.
You know, Mom started taking us to yoga. I was 10, you were 8.
Yeah.
We used to go to fucking
City Yoga, probably
Rudy Matia's class. And
I
don't know if we ever went to Noah Maze's classes, but
yeah. Well,
anyway, we were going to yoga.
Yeah.
From the time we were kids. Thank God. I feel so blessed that we had that education, you know?
Yeah.
And this tool for living, really. Because that's what it is. It's a tool for living.
Yeah.
A tool for life.
Right. Right. Yeah. Sweet, dude.
You feel good?
Yeah, I think that's good for now.
Good, man.
We could go for a while, but that's good.
Dope, brother. Thanks for having me.
I love it. I love it. So, yeah, you guys know us. Reality Now. Check out this. So this will be on realitynow.substack.com. I've also just started the Instagram, Reality Now TV. Ebb's obviously got the Eben Flow. Check out Higher Power Workshop. We've got some cool stuff coming up there, too.
Dope merch.
Ebb's got his book on Amazon. I've got my book on Amazon, or my books. We've also got A Life Worth Dying For on Amazon. And we'll probably be working on a new book soon. We had one in the works, but we shifted gears, but we'll have to figure out what we want to do next with that. And then I think that's it. Call somebody. I think you have somebody to speak to.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
There's probably somebody.
Maybe not a family member. Maybe not your mom, your dad, or a sibling. Maybe it's your fucking high school teacher or somebody you met at the coffee shop. Yeah. Like,
probably preferably not a family member. See who else is out there.
Dude, you wouldn't believe these comments, man.
It's
amazing.
Blew
my mind. I was so fascinated by it.
Well, just continue being the mirror. Just continue being the mirror. Intimacy is into me, I see. And remember, there's an I in illness and a we in wellness. Whoever thought of that, wherever that came from, is profound.
I first heard that from Mom in her dissertation from
her
master's in yoga science.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a big one.
And get out of the terminally unique thing. Everybody's got something going on. Whether it's exactly how your thing going on, it's probably not. You can probably find somebody that's got your exact problem. But on Earth, somebody has a challenge that they're moving through, and we all need help moving through that.
Mm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Drop the shame.
Yeah.
Shame acronym, should have already mastered everything.
Mm.
Allow your humanity into this thing.
Big deal.
Reality Now TV, the Ebb and Flow podcast, realitynow.substack.com. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Eb.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah. Love you
Dope.
all.
Thank you to Badia.
Oh, yeah. Thank you to Badia and Mohammed here. We'll tag him on
Vineland,
stuff.
North Hollywood.
Yeah, he's got really amazing things.
Incredible pieces here. It's all imported from Morocco.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Check it out. We'll put the link in you know, the
show
notes and
notes
tag
and
them,
stuff.
and you can see that. So,
So,
namaste.
love y'all.